Welcome to the IoA Spring Sprint. That should say Spring Sprint on the street on the screen. I hope you can all see my slides. Today, I'm just going to be running through the task itself, what you're expected to do, and all of the rewards and outcomes we're looking for from the sprint. Before my colleague Claire goes over open data and the actual knowledge you need to take into consideration when considering what the challenge is. There'll also be a lot of information on the Google Classroom in text form and in an easily digestible document about the sprint. This is not the only help you're getting. This is just the start. But as I say, welcome and thank you for taking the time out of your Tuesday for joining me. So what are we going to cover today? Firstly, I'll make sure everyone understands what the sprint challenge is. Then we'll go over quickly how to frame a strong problem and idea, what makes a good submission and what the winning submissions will look like, how your submissions will be judged, and then finally we'll just run over what is going to happen next, how you'll be added to the Google Classroom, and the support available during the sprint. So, what is the goal of the sprints? If you joined our sprint exactly a year ago, this is a very similar idea. You are going to be creating a business idea pitch in a Shark Tank style presentation for us to judge. We are aware that a lot of you may be approaching examinations, and this sprint is not going to be heavy on the technical side. This will be all about communication, clarity of ideas, and business thinking. By the end of this sprint, we will want you to have identified a real-world problem or idea, and then propose a product, service, or business idea using the data from OpenStreetMaps as the foundation of the products. You'll be judged on how you present your idea clearly and communicate the strengths and weaknesses and trade-offs of your business idea. This is going to be all about business thinking, innovation, and using open data to your advantage. So Claire will, after me, go over mostly everything about OpenStreetMaps and open data, but very quickly we just need to understand what OpenStreetMaps is so that I can properly explain the challenge. So OpenStreetMap is just a free, open, community-built map of the world. It's classified as open data and anyone can contribute to it, anyone can use it, and it powers thousands of apps and services that would otherwise be very expensive to run as they'd be forced to use Google Maps and other private proprietary map providers. So it's a piece of open data and open digital infrastructure that anyone can access. Why does this matter? Well, without open data, and especially open geospatial data, there'll be very few companies that will essentially have a monopoly over geospatial and map data. This will make innovation through any map-based services or any services that need to use specific locations very difficult and very high cost. The existence of open data in this field really allows anyone to attempt to innovate through using map data. This allows small to medium-sized enterprises and startups to exist without having to pay a very high cost of using private map data. So as I say, OpenStreetMaps really reduces dependencies on proprietary platforms such as Google Maps, and it enables startups to exist and scale at a low cost. The main takeaway you need to take away from this slide is it prevents monopolies and it enables everyone to innovate using open data. Open data does also have trade-offs, and this will be gone over later on and during a support session later in the student sprint. But OpenStreetMaps may also have its downside. I'm sure if any of you have used Wikipedia, you'll know the downside of having a collaborative space where anyone can contribute and anyone can edit. There may be gaps in coverage, there may be biases in the data, there may be inconsistent quality or outdated or incomplete map data. You need to take this all into account, and the winning submissions of the sprint will acknowledge these limitations in open data and will talk about how your product works around these trade-offs. Simply acknowledging that there are downsides to using open data, but not talking about how your idea gets around the limitations of these downsides is not enough. So what is your task? Your task is to identify a real-world problem or innovative idea that really uses open map data and open street maps to solve. You'll need to propose a product, service, or business idea that uses and relies on OpenStreetMaps data for its building and for its solution. You'll need to be discussing advantages and limitations of this service, and it is meant to be majority a business idea. You will be judged on your business thinking, your clarity of communication, and your confidence. This, as I say, is a conceptual challenge. It's about theory and it's about business design. You're not expected to actually do any coding or analysis. You're not meant to be building a system or a prototype or a minimum viable product. You're simply pitching an idea clearly and innovatively. It's, it's important that you make sure that you are thinking like a founder or a product designer during this pitch. You don't want to be thinking too much like an engineer or a data scientist. You need to be asking yourself at every point, what problem does my idea solve? Who's benefiting from it? Which different demographics will benefit from it most? For example, is this map data that will help young business owners, or will this help mostly elderly and accessibility within cities? You then need to explain and ask yourself, why does OpenStreetMaps make this idea possible? What is OpenStreetMaps saving if it didn't exist? And then what are the risks and limitations of my idea? The best submissions and the best ideas will be simple, clear, and believable, but they'll also fill a gap in the market. So the second step is connecting your idea directly to OpenStreetMaps. You'll need to ask yourself, what information does OpenStreetMaps provide? Why is open geospatial data useful for your idea? And how much harder would it be not using OpenStreetMaps? You need to make sure you are very clearly conveying what advantages open data creates when building your idea and pitching your idea. This is really important as this is a sprint about primarily open data and open geospatial data. Your idea really should be depending on OpenStreetMaps, not just mentioning it. Thirdly, you're going to be wanting to define your solution very clearly, and this is a big stumbling block for a lot of student submissions. They have an idea of their product, but they're not defining what the product is in a clear sense and defining the problems that it solves. So you really need to make sure you're describing what the product or service does, who would use it, what's the target demographic or target clientele, and how the system would work or the product would work at a high level. This all combines into the value that your product is creating, and there's potential costs and trade-offs for that value to be tangible. You want to avoid over complexity. You want to focus on the clarity and business purpose of your pitch. You'd need to, as I say, acknowledge trade-offs. Any strong business idea comes with positives and negatives that need to be balanced. Strong submissions will go into detail of these trade-offs, and these trade-offs, as I have covered, will include limitations in data, regional biases, and practical constraints. You need to always consider what could go wrong when launching a minimum viable product or a business idea, and we expect the same from you with these pitches. And finally, building the presentation and presenting it itself. Generally speaking, we need your submissions to be about 8 to 10 slides, not too long, not too short, but a clear structure is what will really benefit you when it comes to judging. You need to make sure you clearly show the problem, the idea, how it relies on OpenStreetMaps, and its advantages and limitations. Make sure to keep your idea clear and focused. And then when it comes to recording, we do want all of your submissions to be recorded with vocal narrative over the slides. It is preferred if you are on video, however, this is not mandatory. This just is more in line with what will be expected in real-world hiring environments. So you're going to want to record a short video walkthrough of your pitch. Aim for absolutely no longer than 10 minutes in length. This is too long, but it can be much shorter if you are able to convey the detail you need succinctly and concisely. Make sure you focus on speaking naturally and clearly so that we can understand what you are saying and you are not waffling or adding too much verbiage to your presentation. And finally, explain what you're thinking. Explain the thought process behind the slides. You do not want to simply just be reading out the slides word for word. And if this means putting less text on the slides and adding some speaker notes, this is recommended. You need your narrative to bring value to the people watching your presentation. Imagine you're pitching to an investor or a hiring panel, just like in Shark Tank, if you guys have watched that show. So what will you be judged on? You'll mostly be judged on how well you define the problem and define your solution and link your pitch to OpenStreetMaps. You need to make sure you do not stray away from the criteria that we have mentioned here. The quality of your communication and the clarity of your pitch will be really important. If you want to go the extra mile, visualizations, case studies, and statistics from existing OpenStreetMap software will set your presentation apart from others. Now, we've already done this sprint in this style a year ago before, and there are a few common mistakes that many students made. The first one is choosing a too vague or too unrealistic problem. You want to create a pitch for a product that will be viable in the current business climate. You don't want to be too far-fetched, too futuristic, and you don't want to solve a problem that's too vague and too general. Ideally, you're filling a gap in the market that isn't very saturated right now. You need to make sure that your product actively uses and depends on OpenStreetMaps. Simply mentioning it is not going to be enough. You need to use it meaningfully and explain how you use it meaningfully in your pitch. Don't ignore trade-offs, limitations, and biases. I understand that this adds another layer of thinking, and it can be sometimes difficult to think out of the box in a conceptual way when you're considering a new technology. But I do recommend looking online, taking the time to understand the trade-offs of open data and understanding what has and could go wrong. It's often tempting to be ambitious and build a really complex, cool, novel idea, but clarity is much more important than overcomplicating the idea. You want to make sure you are clear in your presentation and you don't want to have too much complexity to the technical theory behind your products. And finally, you don't want to read directly from the slides. This is a massive red flag. You want your narration to add value for the people watching the presentation and the people judging the presentation. Generally speaking, if I could gain the same amount of value or information from watching your presentation muted compared to unmuted, then your narration is not adding value. So be sure to keep in mind that simple, clear, and credible presentations will beat the more complex but more unclear ones. So we're approaching the end of me defining the task, and I hope this is clear for you. After Claire's presentation more so about open data, there will be time for some questions and answers if you need. And if any questions come to you later, you can always email me or put a message in the Google Classroom. But as key takeaways, here are the ones that you should really be thinking about from the start. You really want to define a real problem, not a made up or too far-fetched one, and you really clearly want to link your product idea to OpenStreetMaps. You want to explain why open data matters in general and how your product is benefiting from open data instead of relying on proprietary services. Acknowledge the limitations and trade-offs and be sure to be thinking with your business cap on. And finally, practice communicating clearly and confidently as you will be judged on this. So for next steps, the QR code on the left is the QR code to register for the actual sprints. After this webinar has ended, I will be sending out invitations to the Google Classroom where all communication for the sprint will be held. You'll receive an email and then you'll have to accept the invitation to join the Google Classroom. This sprint will last 3 weeks and the deadline for submissions is the 2nd of March next to 2026. You want to be starting to explore open data and OpenStreetMaps as soon as you can. Don't leave things to the last minute and be sure to draft your presentation early to give you time to record and submit and make sure that you are happy with it. For this sprint, we are only taking individual submissions. There are no teams allowed with this product submission because we are not expecting you to do a large level of analytics or coding. This is simply a theory business driven submission and sprint. And finally, there is, of course, pricing. The pricing follows the same trends as our previous sprints. They will include Amazon vouchers per winner, per submission, certification, and features on our website and PR pieces. Finally, in terms of how many winners will win, about 10 to 15% of submissions will be classified as winners. So make sure you go the extra mile, explore the data and explore OpenStreetMaps as much as you can and really set yourself and make sure you stand out. I'm just going to leave this slide on the screen for a couple more minutes or a few more seconds as this slide has the QR code for registration. If you missed this slide, we do have posters up in most schools, as well as you can access this recording later on YouTube to access this QR code for registration. There's no problem if you register slightly later. The sprint is ongoing and you can start and join at any time. With that in mind, I'm going to pass over to my colleague Claire to talk more about open data and OpenStreetMaps specifically.
So this is where I am, and this is OpenStreetMap. This is how it looks like to the user, to the viewer. So you can put anywhere in here, Poole Harbour. I'm not actually in the middle of the sea, you'll be happy to know, but I'm here on this picture. And it's pretty accurate, and it's tagged with all sorts of information. And I'm sure if you try searching for your own town and your own home, you'll be able to find it, even if you live somewhere quite remote. This is basically what the map looks like from a front-end user perspective. But it's what goes on in the background that makes this data set so exciting. All of it is going to be tagged with all sorts of information. So people will go in, any of us will go in, and we will add a tag. Is it a building? Yes, it is. Is the building a house? Yes, it is. Or it's an office block, or it's a place of worship. People have gone in and tagged all sorts of information, anything that they feel is valuable. Now then, definitely about 10 years ago, this was highly, highly problematic because the only people doing the tags were a few white male people living in Europe and in the USA and a few other countries. And so you had tons of information about things like, I don't know, bike cafes and craft beer providers, things that they were interested in. And if you're a woman going on there looking for something like childcare facility, there was nothing at all. I think that's becoming a little bit better, but that's something to bear in mind, that this is all done voluntarily, all of this lovely tagging. All of the lovely relationships that we can add. Is it a waterway? Is it a, is public transport available here? All of this we can add, but we can only add it if people have actually put in some tags in the first place. And I'm in the wiki for OpenStreet Data at the moment, and you can see what kind of tags we've got there. but it's open, so you can always add your own tags to this. So why are we asking you to look at OpenStreetMaps? Well, there are a couple of reasons. One, the main aim of this sprint is to prepare you for work, to make you more employable and to support you in your career. And anyone who can work with open data immediately adds more value to the company that they're going to work for. Open data is data that is freely available to anyone to use. But there are almost always some terms and conditions. So when we're working with open data, we need to be careful about the licenses that we're using. What we really want is, is something that allows us for commercial development or respects the rules of sharing. And you can find the types of licenses. We've definitely got them in our training, but I can share a link to where you can see the Creative Commons open licenses available. So just because data is open doesn't mean you can do anything you want with it. But luckily for us, OpenStreetMaps is actually shared on a commercial basis. So we can build commercial solutions on top of it. It is also 5-star data. Sometimes people put their data online and it's not much use. It's not very helpful. If you publish results of a piece of work that you've done and you put them in a PDF, you've got to have a pretty specialized piece of technology to pull that out and then put it in a spreadsheet, and it's not really usable. If it's machine readable, that's a big improvement. So this might be an Excel file that you share online. If you can make it non-proprietary, even better, because if we're sharing it as an Excel document, you've got to pay to use Excel. Whereas we would like it to be free to everybody. And so a CSV file would be preferable, and that's why you often see files shared as CSV, because they're non-proprietary. And then once we get into 4 and 5-star, this is where we're in OpenStreetMap territory. 4-star means basically there is a URL attached to every point on the map, which is the case with OpenStreetMaps. This means we can go in and we can target any point on that map that we like using our data analysis. It's all visible to the machine. And then ideally, it would already be linked up to other services. And with OpenStreetMaps, that is 100% the case. We have so many amazing applications already linking to it. And so we want you to start thinking imaginatively, what could you do with this incredible resource? When it comes to data, geographical data is the scaffolding of our digital world. All of the services that we depend on today are very largely governed by geographical data. You want to find a business, you want to have a takeaway delivered to your house, you want to be able to locate other people with a similar community interest to you. A lot of this is built on the back of open data, of geographical data. And if we didn't have OpenStreetMaps, we would have to pay Google whatever money they wanted to be able to use that map data. So it's an incredibly valuable resource that belongs to you, it belongs to me, it belongs to all of us. And companies like Google cannot say to us, you've got to pay me thousands and thousands of dollars just to look at the data. We can all use it, we can all link to it. This image, this is 2004. This is pretty early. This is as early as I could find in the Internet archives of OpenStreetMap. And you can see how very simple it was back then. Nothing like the tool that it is today. You can add locations. We were still often depending on latitude and longitude because not that many streets were actually mapped with a line at that point back in 2004. I'm trying to think how many of you were born by then. But I think it's a little bit close, isn't it? And you could find information and it would literally just be a line and a dot, what we call nodes and links. And you still see that language dominating in OpenStreetMaps. They still talk about the nodes, a building, a park, a tree. In California, every tree has been mapped. They love mapping so much. Um, and, and so you'll often hear people talking about the nodes on there. It is very comprehensive today. This was over 20 years ago, and we have had thousands and thousands of people contributing to it, and it's pretty good these days. Big players use it. Facebook, Amazon, Apple don't always want to pay Google Street Map prices, and so they use it. It got a massive boost. Do any of you remember playing Pokemon Go? Do you remember that craze? Rohan, were you a Pokemon Go?
Yeah, I played a little bit of Pokemon Go when it released.
I played it for like 2 minutes and got bored.
Yeah.
But do you remember it was a game where you pointed your phone at something at whatever was around you, and then this little character would appear, and you could collect the character or you could collect points. Is that an accurate description, Rohan?
Yes, pretty much. Yes. Yeah.
And so it was, and Pokemon Go was built on top of OpenStreetMaps. And so it created a huge motivation to people to add to OpenStreetMaps at the time, because if they wanted the little characters, the Pokemons to appear at the end of their street, they had to add their street to the map for that to happen. And so Pokemon Go gave OpenStreetMaps a massive boost in terms of people who were mapping and planning and contributing to it. And you can see we've got a range of services here. We've got Facebook sharing information about businesses. We've got Amazon using it for delivery. We've got Pokemon Go using it for gaming. I'm not sure what Apple are using it for, quite honestly. They're doing something with it. So today, it's nothing like it used to be. You've got hyper-local detail because it's built by you, the people who live there. We've got footpaths and cycleways, places that Google Maps can't go. Small shops that big companies might ignore have been added to the list. Not all of them, but a lot of them. We get very rapid updates. So when a shop changes over function, a building changes over function, you often get a very quick response because somebody local will update it as soon as that change is made. When they walk past it, they see it, they update it when they go home. Because it's community sourced, you get these incredibly rapid updates, and that can be a huge benefit. You get a community feel, you get mapping parties where people meet up to foster community among people with a shared interest and teach newcomers how to map. And you can tag as much as you want, as many times as you want. You want to tag where the public water fountains are, that's fine. You want to tag where the best wave breaks are off the shore, that's fine. You can tag whatever you would like to tag on there, and people can come and use it. So this is to get you started and get you thinking about all the possibilities that you could use or you could do with your project. This is a lovely one. This is actually kids' play maps, and they download actual street maps from OpenStreetMaps, and then obviously they've added their own diagrams for houses and buildings, but that map plan that you can see there and the river, that comes directly from OpenStreetMaps. That's a German business producing hyper-personalized play mats for children in Germany. Lovely idea. California is very mountainous. In fact, lots of areas where technology is highly popular. Colorado, they love a mountain. They want to know information about mountains. And so this Peak Finder is a website that links to OpenStreetMaps, and it will tell you the height of all of these different mountains, and you can see sunset times, terrain details, so you can plan your hike or your ski trip or whatever it is you're passionate about. And you can see what mountains you can see from where you are, which mountain you have to climb to see the most mountains. Lots of fun. That's just a nice community project benefiting a huge number of people. We have social projects. This is a lovely one that I like. So this is one again in Germany, actually, where they help farmers to sell directly to customers, directly to the public, and they get better profits. better for the farmers. We all know, I think around the world, our farmers are struggling. And it creates that local connection and that local business and trade that supports and benefits everyone. Um, oh, Rohan, we have time, don't we?
Yep, we should have time. Yep.
This is one of my favorite applications, not Pokemon Go, although it was a gaming application. This is actually a community-based game building project. So you can build your own video game. You can build a kart racing game to race down the street you live in and to whatever building near your house you want to go to. It's they've got a new project, so it's Super Tux Kart is the name of the gaming project. So this is building gaming tracks, and they do have a new collaboration with OpenStreetMaps. Let's go to it, and it's a little bit basic. You can see. I hope you can you see that, Rohan?
Yep.
Here
Yep.
we go. Verticals. Yep, off we all go. A little bit basic, but this is actually someone's street where they live. And this data came solely from OpenStreetMaps to create the walls, the buildings, the height and the altitude and the elevation of the buildings, where the streets are. And then as a designer, you can then start adding in whatever fun things you want to add into your game. So I think that's a brilliant, application of it. Lots of fun. Now then, we've got a huge number of community projects that are built on top of OpenStreetMaps. So you don't need to be thinking about profit. You can certainly be thinking about making the place where you live a better place. And I think this is a really good one. If you're a student and you want to show the value you can add, I think community-based projects are a great idea. We've got lots and lots that are like this. WalkSafe is linked to OpenStreetMaps, and it allows particularly women walking alone at night. It allows them to track where they are, share data about alleyways, dark alleyways where they feel unsafe. One of the things I hate about Google Maps, which I do automatically use when I'm lost, is that when I arrive in a strange town at night and I want to walk to the hotel, it will send me down the nastiest, darkest streets imaginable. No street I would ever choose to go down, because technically it's the most direct route. And that's all Google Maps are optimized to do. So I think this one is a really great one. It can help to reduce crime, improve emergency responses. In fact, there's a whole community that does that. Now then, so the project for students for the sprint, it's only a couple of weeks, and we just want to see a proposal from you. A good proposal will have a very simple structure, to be honest, with all of the things that Rohan has mentioned. But if you can say, I will help my target audience, whoever they are, women walking alone at night, surfers who want to find really great new waves to surf, whoever your target audience is, I will help them achieve a benefit. Feel safer at night, avoid danger at night, find some amazing new waves, whatever it is you would like to build. I think there's a lot of applications for niche navigators. So these are things that will help you find unusual things like beautiful sunsets. Here is a location near you where there is a stunning sunset view. Off you go and have a look at it. Those kinds of things. If you can say who it is you're trying to help, what benefit you're going to help them with, then that's really what we're looking for from this proposal. And we are only looking for the proposal. We're not looking for you to do any work. But just in case, just in case you do, at the end of the sprint, when it's all over, you think, you know what, this would be an amazing thing to put on my CV, which is what we want from you. And if you are very technical, you might want to go that little bit further. And so I'm very quickly, before Rohan stops me, very quickly, if you do actually fancy building on this, it's not that hard. We've got tools that will help you to query OpenStreetMaps. So this will help you to find all of those nodes with the tag. And I think it's helpful just to remember, you know, this is how it works. You find tags. So you find amenities like bookshops or bike shops or cafes or castles, these kinds of things. You've got to make sure that you've got tags in there. Overpass Turbo will help you find those tags. Really powerful API to get you straight into OpenStreetMaps data. If you're so inspired you'd like to actually have a go at building this. And then Leaflet.js is a really nice tool to make slippy maps. Slippy maps means that you can move around them and the map kind of stays centered, or you can zoom in or you can zoom out, just as I was doing with the web view of OpenStreetMaps. That's a really great tool. And then you just go back to Overpass and overlay your markers to your map. If this is a thing you would like to have a go at building, if you would like to have a go at building, or if you're also inspired, you don't have to have the technical skills to get involved in OpenStreetMaps. You can create a time machine. There is a whole OpenStreetMaps community that creates historical maps, so it shows how things used to look. If you live in Singapore, for example, today it looks nothing like it looked when my friend was there when we were at university. Singapore today looks nothing like it did in the 1990s. You can save lives. There's an incredible community called Humanitarian Hot Hot guys. You can become hot. Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. They if there's a disaster, it's a group of thousands of volunteers that will immediately start working with satellite data and start looking at the photographs of the damaged area of what's happened, and then map that to the OpenStreetMap data. And literally within an hour or two, emergency services on the ground have access to a whole load of information and data that they didn't have literally 1 hour before. Phenomenal tool to help people in emergency responses, and you can join them. You can join the HOT team. Streets Complete, that's a really nice one. If you have no technical skills but you love this idea, and you look at your street and you look at your neighborhood and think, I could do something with this. This just asks really simple questions like, here is a thing, is it a building? Yes. What kind of building is it? It's a shop. And it's literally just answering questions that people would like to know as you walk around the streets. So if you are inspired by our sprint, which we always hope might happen, then you can, if you really want to, get involved in this, and it's a great thing to put on your CV. But let me stop there, because the actual task that you're doing for us will simply be to make that proposal for a use of OpenStreetMaps. So this is basically the tool you're looking at, but it's not quite like Google Maps. You can tag anything you want here. I would tag lizard sightings. We have a very valuable lizard that lives over here on Morden Heath. Or I would tag seal sightings. My friend lives here on one of these islands, and he has seals that live on in front of his house. Any kind of solution you like. We just want a proposal from it. Who does it help? How will they benefit? And what kind of tagging will you be using? So I think OpenStreetMaps is the best. I love it. I think it's a great tool, and that's why we've got you using it on this particular task. Right, we've got a couple of questions in the Q&A. Oh, will it be team-based or individual? Rohan, we have a question in the Q&A.
Yes, I think this sprint is currently just individual submissions, given you have 3 weeks to do a non-technical submission. That should be enough time, and it really allows you to individually learn how to present and communicate confidently. With teams, sometimes it's one person doing all the work, one person doing all of the pitching and presentation, and we want all of you to gain value from this sprint. So I think just individual submissions this time.
And the value on your CV, whether you win or not, even if you don't win, there is a huge value to put this on your CV. It shows that you are prepared, number one, prepared to put what you learn in theory into practice. Number two, that you are able to problem solve and communicate ideas. As Rohan has just said, it's really about communicating your plans and proposals and explaining the value of it. And number three, just that ability to work with open data makes you so much more valuable to a company because it opens up the number of possibilities of data sets that could be used to that business. You know, Amazon are finding value in this. This is not pretend. This is how companies work. So that's the benefit. Yeah. So it's an individual task so that you each have that opportunity to develop and show that. And if you win, even better. Even better if you win. But if not, you've still done that work. And that's what this is really about. It's about careers and employability. We have another question. Is it not possible that the topics problems might be similar or even the same as we are all working with OpenStreetMaps related ideas? Would that make any difference? You might come up with the same thing. Yes, especially if you're all in the same town. We do often have people from the same area who have the same who've identified the same problem. I don't think it makes a difference, but if it's something very obviously overlapping with an existing service, I would have, and a big existing service like the historical mapping that I mentioned, or the emergency response mapping, the HOT team that I mentioned, if it's exactly the same as something really large that already exists, for me, you would have to make the case, why do we need your solution? Why can't we use the existing solution? So if you come up with a proposal and it happens to be the same as another person's, for me, not a problem. If it is the same as an existing highly well-known solution, why would we need yours when we've got these amazing resources already in existence? Rohan, question for you. Does the idea have to be related to the town we live in?
The idea absolutely does not have to be related to the town you live in. It can be anything you want using OpenStreetMaps. It can be in a town on the other side of the world if you want, or it doesn't have to be centered around a specific location. It could be a global application that uses maps of the world. So it's really you can be flexible, you can innovate, you can think outside the box. You're not restricted to many conditions. Really, the only condition is using OpenStreetMaps.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what proposals we come in. Actually, it's kind of easy to use it in your own local area. It's easier to use it there. But yeah,
Yeah.
you can go anywhere in the world you want. Antarctica.